Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, April 22nd, Maplewood City Council Manager Workshop. City Clerk Sint, would you please do the roll call for us tonight?
Councilmember Cave. Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Present.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
I'm here as well. Thank you. Council members, would someone like to make a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved. Second.
I think it was Councilmember Cave.
Yeah.
Who made the motion,
Yep.
seconded by Councilmember Lee. It really sounded almost
Yeah.
stereo.
It was.
The motion to approve our agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We have no unfinished business tonight. We do have new business. We're having a presentation from the Metro Transit Purple Line project update. Steve Love, you are indicated as the initial presenter. We have some distinguished guests here, including Commissioner Victoria Reinhardt. But Mr. Love, would you kick us off, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor and Council. As you mentioned, we're joined by the Purple Line project team. Tonight, they'll be giving us an update on the White Bear Avenue corridor study. A couple areas that you'll be hearing about are two alternatives for design along White Bear Avenue. Also be looking at two options for the end line of Purple Line, along with additional information such as public engagement. So with that, I will turn it over to Craig Lamoth, and he can kick us off.
Welcome, Craig.
And if we could get the PowerPoint, please.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, Madam Chair and council members. Thank you for your time this evening. I know you have a 7 o'clock sharp city council meeting, so we'll be done by then, if not before. And we're actually hoping to have more of a dialogue with you here tonight. If you remember, we were last before you early December, and we came down off the dais and had tables and roll plots, and at that time, we were here to answer primarily questions about what is center running and what is side running, what are you proposing for Maplewood on White Bear Avenue. Tonight, we have some items to share, a short presentation, but we're really seeking your feedback on two things. We are looking for feedback on endpoint. If you remember in December, we had come and give you an update that we had looked at a whole host of different ways to serve the North End District through conversations with city staff and stakeholders like St. John's Hospital and M Health Fairview. We narrowed it down to two options. So we've got more information to share on those two options tonight, and then would like to have a dialogue on those two options. We also came before you with basically lines on the map, and at that time, that's what they were, a little more than lines on a map, and explained what center running and side running would mean on White Bear Avenue at a very high level. We had done no traffic study at that time, if you recall. We had not looked at property impacts or any of those kind of things. And so you'll hear from Stephen Smith tonight, the Deputy Project Manager for Purple Line, and he'll walk through those two different options. We've spent the winter time frame evaluating those options, and I actually have just taken the two endpoint options plus the design concepts for White Bear Avenue out to the public for about a 5-week period from mid-March to mid-April. That public comment period was set to close on April 12th. We are still continuing to hold that softly open because one of the things to mention here tonight, we had originally had planned to come before you tonight, had penciled it in with your staff a number of weeks ago, to come forward and preview staff's recommendation on the proposed preferred design concept for White Bear Avenue. Since then, in the last few weeks, we've been asked to look at a new option, a narrowed center running option in St. Paul. The Corridor Management Committee endorsed that action on April 4th, and so as a result, our schedule has been adjusted a little bit. And so the next time we'll be before this body will be sometime in the summer. Don't know exactly time certain. Could be as early as end of July, or could be later in the summer. And that would be really to do what we had originally planned to do, which was to preview a proposed preferred concept for White Bear Avenue. So tonight, we would love to take your feedback on both the endpoints as well as the design options for Maplewood, be able to take that feedback we get here tonight and be able to help inform a staff recommendation that we would come back. Also weighing in, we're still synthesizing all that we heard from the public over the 5-week period and anything else that comes in. In addition, you'll hear some of the technical differentiating criteria from Stephen tonight as it relates to the side and center running options specifically in Maplewood. So with that, I already talked a little bit about this. This is our two primary pieces. We'll give you a little bit of information on both, and then we'll pause. And we'd love to get feedback and reaction. Questions, too. If you've got questions on it, more than happy to answer any questions. But we'd love to hear from you. Anything up until a preference. If you want to provide us a preference on endpoints or design options, we're more than happy to take that. That would help guide staff as we put together a recommendation here later this summer. Mentioned this too as well, so as of earlier this month, we've now added a center running option. Just real briefly, since it is in St. Paul and your more focus is on Maplewood, we had looked at last fall a center running option in St. Paul as we did in Maplewood, and we took one forward in Maplewood. I think we mentioned in early December that the corridor varies quite greatly by right-of-way width. It's about 67, 68 feet wide on Maryland Avenue and White Bear south of Larpenteur and St. Paul, and gets up to about 140 feet wide at Beam Avenue and White Bear Avenue. So center running in Maplewood fit much better than it would in St. Paul. It was screened out last fall in St. Paul and didn't move forward. And it wasn't until about January after the holidays we started hearing from community leaders questioning why we weren't considering a center running option in St. Paul as well. And so they've asked us to look at center running differently than we looked at it last fall. A more narrow configuration where everything gets a little tighter on the roadway. And so that's what we're exploring right now, a narrower option. And that's going to take a number of weeks. We've been asked to fully evaluate it, treat it the same as the other options, and then go out and publicly engage over it. And that will also take time as well. So we think we can get back to the point of a preferred concept for this quarter in the summer timeframe sometime.
I have a question for you. I've heard that St. Paul prefers the center running. Is there a requirement that Maplewood and St. Paul have to have the same preference? And if so, why?
No, that's a very good question, Madam Mayor. There isn't. There are some logical connections and ties where it may strengthen a reason to do so. But for example, here, we didn't have a center running in St. Paul prior to what we were just recently asked to look at. We had just two different side running options, which would have transitioned at Larpenteur going into Maplewood, either continuing a side running option or to a center running option if that's what was desired in Maplewood. So there's always that potential to have something different in Maplewood. Okay. Now, I will note that a center running option, which is why we're looking at a center running option in St. Paul now, the community leaders that are very transit supportive recognize what we recognize, which is center running option, regardless of how it's configured, is generally going to provide better speed and reliability for transit because the center running lanes, whether they're physically separated or just simply separated by paint, act more as exclusive transit lanes where no other vehicles are in there, so then there's no issues with a bus being slowed down by a vehicle that's not supposed to be there. Side running options of any configuration, you're sharing that side running lane with right turning vehicles. And function of volume of right turning vehicles, whether the right turning vehicles are Amazon trucks that may be stopping in lane, whether they are or aren't supposed to be, will degrade the speed and reliability for transit.
We have another question. Councilmember Cave.
Hi, thank you. One more, because you're looking at the narrow center running line, why are we not looking at narrow center running in Maplewood also?
Good question. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Cave, we've got more space, more right-of-way physically within the corridor already in public hands to be able to not have, for example, smaller platforms. What we're looking at in St. Paul does include skinnier platforms than the center running option that we're already considering and have been evaluating for Maplewood. We would always look at things to minimize property impacts, and we're continuing to work with your staff. One of the things that we're looking at down in St. Paul is not having any boulevards. If you're familiar with the corridor, there are some areas that have boulevards and boulevard trees. What we heard from the community leaders is they would be willing to give that up if they could get center running down in St. Paul. In Maplewood, there are already areas that the sidewalk is not separated by a boulevard, so we get a little more flexibility. So it really comes down to space.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So as I mentioned, what we're focused on right now is the project corridor on White Bear Avenue. That's what we've been focusing all of our time really since about this time last year after the city process concluded for that was hosted in February and March. We have not done much with Bruce Vento Trail Corridor. We are in the process of refreshing ridership and cost just because it is now a year and a half old since the last time those two metrics are done. Just as a reminder, after we get to a preferred design concept for White Bear Avenue Corridor, we have to compare back against the Bruce Vento Trail Corridor. So that is also still planned. That'll be done before we get to a revised locally preferred alternative in the late summer timeframe. So we still have 2 more rounds of engagement, one focused on down in St. Paul on this third option, and then we'll be coming back out and talking to folks about whether we should be in the White Bear Avenue Corridor or co-located with the Bruce Vento Trail. I will say we encountered a lot of folks in the last 5 weeks when we were holding open houses and other forms of engagement that were less interested in giving us preferences on what the design of White Bear Avenue should be, but to reinforce that the project shouldn't be co-located with the Bruce Vento Trail Corridor. So we've got a lot of folks eager for us to get to that step of the process. We're just not there yet. So giving you an update on endpoints, as a reminder, we were down to 2 back in early December. These are the same 2, slightly different graphics and some additional information. So we have one option that would end the purple line at the Maplewood Mall Transit Center. And then Metro Transit's in the process of, we've been having conversations with Service Development to bring back the Route 223 that existed pre-pandemic. The Route 223 at that time ran from the Transit Center, went up onto St. John's Boulevard, made a stop right at the front door, and then went to points west all the way, I think, to Rosedale Mall. So they're looking at that route again, particularly in the context of Network Now, which a draft plan should be out and available for public comment here later this spring. But we've also been talking to them about connecting a Route 223 directly to the college. Because I'll talk a little bit about what we had heard from the college about what they perceive to be their transit needs. So this option ending at the transit center would also include some form of the Route 223, going both east and west. Then we're carrying option number 2, essentially bringing Purple Line to directly serve St. John's Hospital at the station that's always been contemplated. This was the station location back when the project was going to downtown White Bear Lake. If you recall, it was the Purple Line came up the Bruce Vento Trail Corridor, then went east to the transit center, then double backed to go north on Hazelwood, making that stop at St. John's, and then going across the freeway. This concept here would continue to carry that station, but then we have to have a place to be able to turn the bus around and lay over and then restart the route going in the southbound direction. And that would be at County Road D on city, a combination of city and county-owned property. And that would also include a station. By design, any place that we have a layover facility also has to have a station, whether it's needed or not. And then this concept includes, similar to what we're doing on White Bear Avenue, you probably heard it's a full roadway reconstruction project on White Bear and Maryland Avenue, rebuilding sidewalks, utilities, and such. So that same proposal would apply here to Beam Avenue. The various different considerations we have are somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million to rebuild between White Bear and Hazelwood. There would be no reconstruction on Hazelwood under this option, when the buses would operate in mixed traffic. So a little bit about what we heard from the stakeholders, particularly mHealth, Fairview, their administration, as well as their employees. We were able to administer a survey to 2,800 campus employees. One of the big takeaways was very few use transit of any kind today for any purpose, and very few indicated that if it was provided directly to the hospital that they would use it through the survey. After the survey was completed, we met with mHealth and had an additional conversation. We've actually had a series of conversations with mHealth Fairview administration, but they then articulated a very specific need that they saw as it related to transit in their campus, and that was desiring at least 30-minute service more direct service to the campus from Century College. Because we found out that they sponsor programming, which has class requirements up at the college, but then also in hospital requirements to complete the coursework. And being able to get folks there on time, not late for that in-hospital requirement, very, very important to the administration. As you may know, the Route 219 was brought back last fall to a 30-minute service. It had been hourly. With the pandemic, that provides 30-minute service between the college and the Maplewood Mall Transit Center, but I wouldn't phrase it as direct service. If you're familiar with it, it does a counterclockwise loop from the college along local streets to get down to the transit center. It's about a 12-minute ride on average with 20 potential local stops. And as a local bus stop, it's if anybody's on the bus signaling for a stop, the bus stops. And as the driver approaches a stop, if there's somebody waiting there, they stop. But it can be up to 20 stops between the college and the transit center. So it's not really direct. In addition, it does not go to the hospital. The 219 then requires anybody going to the hospital riding the 219 to make a 17-minute walk, about 0.8 miles, between the transit center and the hospital campus.
Just
so what we're talking about with
a point here.
Yes.
Because this is really pretty critical. I reached out to Danielle Gacci today, who is the Vice President of Operations for St. John's Hospital. And one of the things that that we are aware of with the hospital is that they are going to be expanding within the next 5 years. And so her preference was that the end option be at County Road D and Hazelwood, so that the hospital would have a station there, would have a stop at the hospital because of this expansion, because of the fact, well, and yes, Century College, but more so, they're almost going to be doubling in size. And they want to make sure that they have transit available to attract employees, but also for patients and patient families. And so that would be St. John's preference. And I'll just remind everybody, St. John's, I think, is our second biggest employer in the city of Maplewood. That was from Danielle Gacci today, so thank you. Councilmember Cave, or who was next? Councilmember Juniman?
Yeah, you were talking about Route 219, and how reliable is that going to remain? I mean, way back when we were talking about possibly ending this thing at Century College, one of the reasons was to have them included so that there was a reliable, rapid source to get them from one place to another. So what guarantees can Metro Transit give them/us that it'll remain first of all, it'll remain in place, and secondly, that it will be as efficient as they say it is?
No, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Juniman, that's a good question. So the 219 first isn't anticipated to change. It's been brought back to 30-minute service. The 219 serves area along to the east of here. So it touches the transit center, but it really goes all the way down to Sunray and connects with the future Gold Line. So it's serving a slightly different market. It's intended to be a local route, not focused on speed and reliability, but focused on coverage, which is why it makes so many stops. That's what its purpose is. The 223, so the best of 223 was ever beforehand was a 90-minute service, which honestly is not that great of service. It did serve the front door of the hospital. I would say with this option versus the Purple Line, we were trying to get a Purple Line station to replace that 223 stop, being right at the front door, being right at the centroid of the campus, and the administration really wasn't interested in that, particularly in light of their expansion plans. They didn't want the infrastructure nor the volume of buses that come with a BRT at that location. The 223 has the potential to be serving the front door. Those are conversations that haven't yet been had because it would only be 30-minute service, not the more frequent 15 to 10-minute service on the BRT, and it wouldn't be a full-fledged platform in either direction on St. John's Boulevard, their roadway, and be a stop, likely a shelter. So what they're looking at is the 223, I think there's a desire to bring that back irregardless of Purple Line, but those are still conversations that are being had. So even potentially independent and before Purple Line, the 223 in some form could come back. An extension to the college would likely be as a result of Purple Line being implemented, and would be something that would be considered to coincide with Purple Line. That service would be fast to the transit center, would allow folks that are students primarily that are trying to get to class work in the hospital to transfer to Purple Line under the option 2, but it would be a transfer versus this option here would allow them to go continue on after making a quick stop at the transit center, would continue on to the hospital without the transfer. So that's one of the big differences between this option and this option. This option would not have the 223 extended to Century College, most likely.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cave.
I think you answered the question. I kind of had it with Kathy, but I am still kind of confused with the 223 and the 219. Because 219, we can't extend it to the hospital at this point, correct? And the 223, we're not sure if it's really going to go there. And I'm kind of confused with Century College. Are they saying that they don't want any more buses there, or a multitude, fast or time-wise, or what is their, I want to know what their buy-in is for this too, because it's a decision that we have to make, and if we can't really get to Century, then I want to know what the best solution is.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Cave, so what the mayor reported with her conversation with Danielle, Danielle is our point of contact. So she has also indicated, because again, that little dot that says St. John's Boulevard up there has been on a map since at least 2017. So that's been something that's been supported by mHealth Fairview as a location. It was the only location to consider when we had different alignments going to downtown White Bear and such. It is on their, it's not at the front door, it's not in the centroid of their campus, but it serves the western edge of their campus. And so we have heard that if Purple Line comes directly, that's where they want it at. What we did, so the 219, because it serves a different market, the 219, even when the 223 existed in March of 2020 pre-pandemic and before, it was 219 at 30 minutes, getting students from the campus down to the transit center on 30-minute service, but not the fastest in the world, making up to 20 stops, and then transferring to 90-minute service on the 223, which again wasn't great service, and depending on, you had to time your connections, and you may be waiting at the transit center for a while, and honestly, folks probably made the 18-minute walk back then. So what we had heard, again, not to discount this, we heard from Danielle and other members of the administration, their top need was better, more direct service directly from the college to the campus to ensure that students are getting there to start their shift or whatever they characterize it as for the work that they're doing as it relates to their coursework. And so the option ending at the transit center allows Metro Transit to have the resources to be able to offer that. But I don't remember if it was Councilmember Juniman, somebody mentioned about performance. And yes, transit performance is important. So an extension, say, to Century College with Purple Line would likely be a 2-year demonstration project to see whether or not it could perform up to the transit standards necessary to maintain that service over the long haul. But it's also a service that's more flexible than, say, extending Purple Line directly to the college. Purple Line, ABRT, regardless of whether it's Purple Line or not, is intended to run with the same amount of frequency generally all times of the day. There's just not demand, and that's what we found out a year and a half ago. It's a college. Busy during Monday through Friday during the fall semester, slightly less so during spring semester, almost nothing going on there in the summer, and weekends are pretty quiet too as well. So the 223 extension could be tailored exactly to the needs of the college, between the college and the hospital. So that's one of the benefits of that.
Thank you.
Guess we're already
This may be
into
very-
questions and feedback.
Just one, okay, well, that's good. This may be a very simple question, but, in looking at where the Purple Line is going to travel, that is a set point, whereas these commuter, the 219, the 223, those can be flexible, and you can do what, I mean, that can change much easier, obviously, than we need to get this right in terms of how we're going to move people around. Is that accurate?
Yes, Madam Mayor, each of these would be slightly different. The 223 extension, Century College, for example, would not be a local route. It would likely function as a limited stop route, so
Okay.
maybe it makes one stop on White Bear Avenue between Beam and the freeway, then it hops on the freeway most likely. It probably follows the route that Purple Line was looking at back when we were exploring a year and a half ago going to Century College. We'd be on the freeway to Century Avenue, and then maybe we're making a stop at Long Lake Road, I believe it is, to serve the UPS facility, and then it's the college. So possibly 3 stops
Okay.
in total. So it's going to be much faster, quicker.
So that can be flexible as
Yes.
opposed to where the purple line should run. Okay. Councilmember Villavicencio.
I guess I would prefer the option 1, but my question for the Purple Line folks and I guess the Met Council would be, what assurances could we hope for or rely on that there would be the 223 to go to Century College?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember, I think what we've been talking about internally is that we would commit for sure for a 24-month demonstration project to test the viability of that service. But understanding too that it's primarily to connect the college to the hospital. And so we're willing to work with both entities, the hospital and the college, to better understand what their needs are between the two of them and make sure we're tailoring it. So I think it's flexible from the standpoint, maybe the 223 extension doesn't go to the college during the summer when there's nobody there or nobody generating demand to the hospital. So it could very well be a very productive route if it's tailored to the demand that the college has with the hospital.
Okay, thank you.
You know, and looking at that, trying to figure out how we can make all of this work, my concern is if the hospital is going to be almost doubling in size, they're going to have staff and patients and patient families that need to get there, which is what Danielle was concerned about. And yes, getting students back and forth to Century College is absolutely critical too, but it seems that that is something, since it isn't going to be the Purple Line, that a commuter bus that you folks can tailor make basically to the school year makes an awful lot of sense that way. Okay, Councilmember Lee.
It's a good point that you made there, Mayor. You know, my preference is the endpoint in option 2, where we go up to County Road D. I think we talked a little bit about view transit user at St. John's Hospital at the moment, and I think with the expansion, I would only assume that we will have more folks getting to transit. But my main concern really is around the patients that are going to be using St. John's Hospital. There's a lot of folks who will go in for surgery or whatever it is that need that transportation. That is the community that we want to be able to serve. And I think, St. John is a gem of Maplewood, and we have to take that into consideration. I think some of the comments I've heard is, well, what's at the transit center? We have to make sure that our endpoint is a legitimate one that is valuable to our community. Reliability is a big piece of it, but I think this will provide a really big, and I think putting this in place will make St. John think a little bit more about how they're going to expand. They'll expand around what our plans are in terms of serving our community. So my preference is endpoint option 2.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. I agree with Councilmember Lee. I think option 2 makes more sense if we are going to focus on the fact that St. John's is indeed going to be expanding. And way back when we started these conversations, one of the reasons County Road D came into the conversation was all the housing we have built up on County Road D. And that the type of people that rent in a lot of those places could very well want to make use of the Purple Line. So I think going to the transit center would be counterproductive for those people.
One thing too, we're talking about St. John's, but if you think about, that is a medical complex, so that they have the specialty I forget what they exactly call it, but right across the street, they do a lot of day surgeries there, and they have regular doctor's appointments, they have urgent care, and then all of the clinics that are located, they're connected by that, they're all connected with the hospital, but there are an awful lot of doctor's offices over there. So they may not be going to St. John's, but they may be going to a doctor's appointment at that complex. And as that grows, that's just going to have more people coming into it. And we need to make sure that people can get there easily. Councilmember Villavicencio.
My question for you, Craig, was, is there any way that we could look at numbers of how many people does a bus like the 223 serve versus the Purple Line bus? Would there be any access to that type of number? And then also, just to clarify at the end, for option 2 on County Road D, would that actually be a spot to stop, or is that actually just, is that an actual bus stop at D?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember, it's an actual platform too. So there's a turnaround and layover space, but there's a platform for anybody up in that area that wants to board. I will see about the ridership numbers. We do have, so there is ridership to be had at a St. John's Hospital station and the County Road D station. Our models show that. One of the things that we're struggling with, it's whether or not that incremental addition it can be justified for the $50 million that it would cost to reconstruct Beam Avenue. And so those are one of the conversations that we'll have to have as well. Some of the other things to note, and I think we've shared it with staff, but we probably should have brought it as supplemental slides to help with questions like this tonight. But we can definitely follow up. So early on when we were looking at this, we went and took a look at all the hospital complexes that we serve with transit in the metro area, and there's somewhere between 6 and 10 of them. And taking a look at what their ridership are. And one of the contributing factors, and I know they still need to figure out the details, and they even shared with us, they still need to figure out the details of their campus expansion, but we get higher ridership, good producing ridership at hospital campuses that charge for parking or under-provide for parking, or a combination of both, where parking is scarce to find and is a motivator to take the alternative, or they charge for parking both on the employee side as well as on the patient and visitor side as well. For those facilities that don't do that, the ridership tends to be what we saw with the 223 before the 223 got abandoned, so somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 10 people per day utilizing the service. So some of the stuff is out of our hands, some of the stuff is more in the hospital's hands and your hands as you approve their development proposals in terms of trying to make it all it can possibly be. The other thing to note too, granted, as you are all very well aware, you never find a project that everybody likes. But one area of vocal opposition that we've heard, even when we were going to downtown White Bear, is the residential community north of the hospital. And so those folks have still come out to the open houses just to keep tabs on us. And I say that they don't desire to see any bus service of any kind operating on their street by their residential community. So just as a heads up, that's going to be a group that will probably be pretty vocal on option 2, and actually did give us comments. I think almost all the negative comments on option 2 were coming from that community.
Thank you. Councilmember Cave.
I just wanted to weigh in, and I feel that option 2 is our best also for both the reasons that the council members have stated. And, it's unfortunate to hear that, a lot of residents don't want it to go all the way up to County Road D, but the initial plan and putting all that housing up there was to provide transportation. I know it's something, the $50 million project is something you're going to have to look into more, but, so I just want to say option 2 is what I would prefer to.
No more questions for now.
All right. If we go back to the PowerPoint. So these are mostly teasers. I'll leave it at that because as I noted earlier, Madam Mayor and Council, we are still summarizing all the feedback we got, including we actually had a survey with survey questions that got at some of the information we were seeking preference on. So these are a couple of questions that we asked the public regarding the endpoint options in St. John's and Century College. So at a future date, we can provide that probably via your staff. Hopefully in about a month, we'll have a summary report on that engagement results. At a high level, it was a mix of what we heard. We heard folks supporting ending at the Maplewood Mall Transit Center. We heard support for ending at County Road D, and we heard support for restoring the Route 223.
Councilmember Juniman.
This is a curiosity question, but it might have impact at some point. Is there an age bracket that has been represented more than another in your public feedback sessions?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember, I would say, and I know some of you came out to what was a pretty robustly attended open house in Maplewood. I would say the demographics were leaning of one kind more so at the open houses, but that's not unsurprising of that kind of venue. But we did a lot of tabling and other engagement. We had an open survey, both available in hard copy form for those who don't use electronics, and then made it available in electronic form. So those tools, we did get a broader array of folks providing us feedback.
Thank you.
I'll end with a question that we've been getting from time to time. I think it came up from one of the council members from Matamidi at Century College or on the Quarter Management Committee on April 4th. So we are still, once we figure out the preferred design concept for White Bear Avenue corridor and endpoint, we will take a look at whether there's merit for Purple Line going any further north. I will note that not a lot of other contributing factors have changed back when we were looking at co-locating with the Bruce Vento Trail. If you recall, in the fall of 22, we are nearing the conclusion of that evaluation process that was leading us to believe that we didn't have a viable project going any further north than the transit center and hospital. And we would not expect to see anything different than that, but we still haven't done that work at this point. With that, we can switch gears unless there are other questions or comments from me. Appreciate the feedback you provided here tonight on the endpoint options. Otherwise, I will turn it over to Stephen Smith, our Deputy Project Manager, to talk a little bit more about center running versus side running in Maplewood.
Thank you. Good evening, Stephen, and welcome.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So similar to Craig, I want to get your all feedback on kind of our design options, and you kind of heard us talk about this several times. So, just like Craig was talking about, feedback is great. As we're trying to figure out what it means to be on White Bear Avenue, as we're kind of completing our evaluation, feedback is always helpful to try to narrow things down. So again, I'm here to talk to you about the two options that we have in Maplewood. And just as a reminder, just from a visualization standpoint, that we're talking about two outside transit lanes and then two general traffic lanes. So taking everything down to two general traffic lanes in each direct, or a single traffic lane in each direction with a median divided too as well. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the trade-offs related to and the challenges related to these options. Just note too as well, you kind of heard Craig talk about it, that the side running option is a semi-exclusive lane. And then when we talk about the center running option, that is a more exclusive lane in the sense that it's bus only. It's not sharing space in the sense of right turners or access to properties and things like that. So Craig kind of mentioned that we had an open house, and we get a lot of questions generally related to kind of operations. So one of the things I wanted to share with you is just operations of a side running condition, operations of a center running condition, so you can just kind of see that. So we actually created an animation. We had an animation running at our open house too as well to kind of help answer any questions that you all may have related to it. And as you're looking at it, I want you to really pay attention to more of the painted red, so you can see kind of the transit operations and how that shared space is with the side running. And then same idea when you start thinking about the center running, I want you to take a look at kind of how that space is operated, take a look at how that general traffic lane has to interact, because one of the big differences between center and side is that for the center running, we're trying to make sure that we are, for unsignalized intersections, that we're not having the left turn movement, so that we're moving everyone to a protected left movement at a signal. So that's one of the key differences between center and side running. So I'm going to show you a short video. Again, I will answer any questions after the video too as well. I will talk more about trade-offs as well. So I'm going to flip real here quick to a video. So give me 1 second. So it's going to zoom in. This is in St. Paul, but St. Paul also has a side running condition. And really just trying to focus in on the movements and seeing how the space is being shared in the sense of right turners, access to driveways and businesses, kind of how that space would end up filling. Because one of the key differences, again, is that we're going to have to think about what does it mean to operate in that space. You know, you heard Craig talk about speed and reliability, and that's going to be a factor related to these options and some of the differences. They're both great options and they offer transit advantages. It's just more about how do you manage that space. Now, I can run it again if anyone wants to see it one more time. It's a short video.
Does anyone else want to see it again? No? Oh,
Okay.
Councilmember Cave would like to see it again.
I do like how you had, at Orange, you had the car stop for pedestrian. Whoever put that in there, that was good, because that hardly ever stops. People stop. I was like, wow.
And you can see that right in the northbound. See that car just used the
So
transit
cars
lane.
can use the red lane.
Yep. To make that turn, to be able to really make those right turns, we're going to have to allow that movement to occur.
Yep.
So that's why you hear me call it a semi-exclusive lane. It's not fully exclusive. One thing that we're doing too as well is doing a bus enforcement study. And this doesn't matter, it doesn't really matter if it's side running or center running. It's just more trying to generally understand from other peer agencies that have similar corridors, what does it look like? What's some of the lessons learned? How can we make improvements too as well? So regardless, as we continue to advance design, this is something that we want to kind of hear from other peer agencies and just trying to get those lessons learned too and incorporate it in. Because as you know, we get a lot of questions related to, well, what does this mean? And it's just like, I always joke around and say, it's just like roundabouts. Back before anyone really thought about roundabouts, there's a lot of learning that has to occur with the general public about how to use a roundabout. It's going to be the same kind of feel related to if side running is selected. There's going to be a lot of training too as well, and what does it mean to use side running lanes? Because just your natural reaction, right, of, oh, I didn't realize I could use that. There's going to be some learning, but as you know, we all are now very familiar with, at least for the most part, roundabouts, right? So we can learn and start getting adjusted to change too as well.
Question, what's the difference in terms of the time? I know in the materials you provided for us, center running is faster and more reliable transit service, and two-sided running, I'm assuming, is going to be slower. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you know, and
How much slower? Do
How
we
much
know?
slower? I would say about a minute. Because
Pardon me?
About a minute
Okay.
slower. And what that really means is this is about a 2-mile segment, right? The whole corridor is about 4 miles long, 5 miles long, including the St. Paul segment on White Bear. So we're talking about 2 miles when I'm talking about that minute. It becomes something a little bit greater if you start thinking about when we're talking about our options. And I think you asked earlier, how would that be connected? If you had a center running option in Maplewood, if you had a center running option in St. Paul, you start seeing a compounding effect related to transit advantages. And so when we talk about 1 minute, I'm only talking about really seeing that savings come from the Maplewood segment in the center running condition.
Are you still contemplating using level boarding? Because I know that speeds things up as well.
That still would include level boarding.
both for the center running and the side running?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Does everyone know what that is, level boarding? Okay.
Okay. And if you want to flip to the center running. I think it's right next to it if you see it. It's that other square. Oh, yep, that one. So here's another animation. And again, it's that feel of, this is about 2 minutes long, giving you that feel of, this one's actually in Maplewood, but over near where we're at right now, near the YMCA. So this is fully dedicated. So you have median on both sides. And now you can see that car pause in the northbound in a second. Because now it has to hold. And one thing I didn't mention is both options have TSP, which is transit priority. And so a bus will either get an extended green when it pulls up, right? So, so you will see that in both options for a transit priority.
Councilmember Cave?
Or early green, I forgot. Either it gets an early green or extended green.
Okay, so, it's different than like the light rail where they don't let you even turn. Like on University, you can't even take a left if a train is coming. That this doesn't have it if a bus is coming and I have a green light, the bus has a right of way, but it doesn't like tell that driver who's taking a left that you can't go.
So thank you, council member. To answer your question, when I mentioned protected left, meaning that you can only make a left if you receive an arrow, versus a flashing yellow
Yep.
is where you see a lot of folks being able to still make that left movement based on
Yeah.
their judgment.
Yeah.
But that judgment is now taken away with a protected left. So you can only make a left if you receive a green.
Okay,
Yep.
so protected left goes back to, because we just started switching kind of over to those yellow.
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Yep,
Good.
and that's because we want to make sure that we don't want folks making that judgment call, and so that's one of the differences between
Okay.
center running. And that also occurs at an unsignalized intersection, and I'll talk about that shortly too as well,
Okay.
that at an unsignalized intersection, we would no longer allow that to occur. We actually fill that space up, actually, with more median, so it would become a right-in, right-out situation at an unsignalized intersection that's there today, would become now a right-in, right-out. So
Okay.
you won't have that left movement.
Thank you.
Just a little bit longer. You can see now pedestrians getting off the bus. It's kind of small, but you can see them walking. So one other thing that we don't talk about is not just only a left, but you can also make the U on that protected left. And because we're closing off more unsignalized intersections where you're gonna have a right-in, right-out situation, you wanna be able to allow for that U-turn movement too as well. I think that's all I have for the video. It's in the PowerPoint, if you go down. Just to the, yep, thank you. All right, sorry about that. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about the trade-offs between the two, because like you heard me earlier, really, they're both great options, and really honestly, from a staff analysis standpoint, there's not a lot of major differences between the two, because when we're trying to solve for making the corridor feel a little bit slower, both these options will do that. When we're trying to solve for being able to allow for more folks to be able to cross safely, both options will really do that. It really comes down to differences between trade-off and challenges between side running and center running. And so one of the things is that I'm going to start off with the side running option. The side running option is a little narrower, meaning that it has lower property impacts just slightly. And when you start thinking about the boulevard space, you get a little bit more boulevard in that side running condition. You're able to now have where you have the sidewalk, you have a little bit wider boulevard, and then you have a transit lane. You have a little bit more buffer. So in terms of low stress walkability is a little bit more low stress in that sense. When you start thinking about maintenance, we did talk to Metro Transit staff about what does it mean to maintain a side running station versus a center running station. Well, from a maintenance standpoint, they're more familiar with it. It's a little bit easier to get access to. And so they said to us that their preference related to maintaining would be a side running condition. From a traffic, you kind of heard me talk about traffic impacts. Well, the difference between side running and center running, well, the side running is a little bit better for traffic conditions because you don't have to create that protected left. It's a little bit easier access on the side or the minor roads too as well. So we are seeing a little bit of difference between traffic delay. And when I talk about traffic delay, I'm more talking about what's your experience like today in the corridor. Even one thing I didn't talk about is that your experience today, taking everything down to a single lane in each direction, wouldn't feel that different. We're talking about the operations of today is fairly well, but when you were talking about tomorrow and taking everything down to a single lane, it would operate fairly well. You won't see that much intersection delay. But I will say that you will see a little bit more delay in the sense of a center running condition. And then we also heard related to access to the platform. It's a little bit easier to access on the side running condition. We also heard from the disability community too as well that this is more familiar to them. It's easier to anticipate and understand versus the center running condition. There's a little bit difference, especially with the split platform condition. Start thinking about what it means to access in the center of the road a little bit more. There's a few more challenges that we also heard related to that. Now, with the center running condition, I'm going to switch gears to that. The center running condition has more opportunity for pedestrian refuges, and that's because of the actual station location. When you think about the station, it comes with a center platform. That's a natural pedestrian refuge. And so now when you're talking about crossing in kind of two phase or two steps crossing, now you have a two-step crossing situation. So the signal will always be timed for you to be able to make the full movement and cross all the way. But for the folks that can't make it all the way across, the center platform will allow for a natural pedestrian refuge. And then from a transit reliability and speed, you kind of heard me talk about that earlier too as well. So the center running platform or the center running option will be slightly faster in that sense and really have that more reliable feel to it. And keep in mind, when we're talking about side versus center, we're talking about sometimes on an average condition. Well, what does that mean in those, non-typical situations where traffic conditions are a little bit heavier? So there's different more, when we talk about speed and reliability, and I talked about a minute, I was only talking about a minute really in that ideal condition. When you start getting into unideal conditions, then you start thinking, well, how does that speed and reliability change for a center running condition? You probably would see a little bit more speed and reliability. And then related to property impacts is a wider cross-section. So there's a few more property impacts that are associated to be a center running option. So with that, I'm going to pause. I'm going to pause there for feedback.
Councilmember Cave.
Yes, speaking about businesses that are along the corridor and residents, what is the feedback? Like, how do we know how many businesses have been contacted and what their feedback is? And can we get a report like to our city manager to hand out to us? Because I want to know which businesses have been contacted and what their comments were on it.
So early on, prior to starting our engagement, before we actually had an open house, we identified some more major impacts, key properties that we wanted to reach out to. There's been a report that we've been generating, also kind of putting what we have heard from different businesses that we have reached out to gather that input. I want to remind everyone that we're at a 1% design. And one of the things that we did was try to reach out to a lot of different businesses that we saw larger impacts to. Over time, there's opportunity to, again, make changes, make enhancements and mitigations to it. But at this early stage, we didn't want anyone to be surprised by walking into an open house and seeing your property impacted. So we are reaching out to different property owners to start receiving that feedback. I have some I don't have the actual feedback that we received from those different property owners here today, because again, I was more trying to focus on just that general feedback from you all, but I can certainly provide you more detail.
Thank you.
I think that's going to be really helpful, because I've spoken with several business owners who have been interviewed by staff, and they're very concerned about the impact on their business. And you can actually see what those businesses are. I think you're going to get to that, aren't you? Where I think it's on the center running, has the most impact on the businesses. And I've spoken to several, this is all with center running, is that right?
No, it's a mixture. So what we tried to do was overlay the impacts. So in green, it's really common for both options, and those are minor impacts, more strip takings, things like that, 3 or 4 feet behind sidewalk. But then when you start getting into the major or more permanent impacts, those are like maybe it's more related to infrastructure, maybe it's more related to parking impacts, where if you have a parking lot, we may need to extend into that parking lot a little bit more because it's a wider. So that one in yellow is actually specific to center running and center running only. So you can see how it kind of changes. What we tried to put in common was the yellow and green, and there's very few properties that are really in common with each other. And then we have a center running total take or total acquisition. And again, because we're at 1% design, these are things that we are identifying as challenges and things that we can work through too as well. I'm going to go to the next slide and say that these are the 3 property owners that we saw higher impacts to, that we reached out to. And again, getting that feedback early from them. But one of the things, even with Planet Soccer, where we're looking at, that was our total take. We identified that one, but even working with our design team, we have our design and engineering manager here today. These are things that we're working through that we could see as potential mitigations too as well.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the videos. I think those are really helpful. I was thinking through this process. I'm a fan of the center lanes, but seeing the visuals, I'm like, if I was a neighbor or constituents, my preference would definitely be the side running lanes. I think there's a few things that, I'm taking into consideration when it comes to this. The consistency is important. So if what's happening in St. Paul, I would like, for drivers who are new to driving, or, me, for an example, sometimes I forget where I'm at. As we change, I think consistency is important for new drivers and for drivers in general. I think that the center driving lane, having those would be safer. I think it would slow down traffic significantly. I have an uncle who lives on White Bear Avenue, and seeing cars zoom by, I think that would definitely help with the traffic piece of it. Efficient and effective, I think that's a big part of it. Was one of the conversations that we were having with the Bruce Mentor Trail was the main purpose of talking about that was to make sure that we're having, the purpose of this is a rapid transit route. And if we're not accomplishing that, it really defeats the purpose of putting this together. So I think that's a big part of it. But really looking at your videos, visualizing it, seeing it, I think as a constituent, the side lanes would definitely be a lot more friendlier, if that's a better way to put it. But as a business, from the business perspective, I believe that the center lanes would make more sense, though.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
I guess, when I look at this, this project in this specific part, I wish we could all imagine you're a senior citizen walking down the street, and maybe you're not that familiar with how the bus works. And if you can imagine what the center lane bus option would look like compared to the side. And I can tell you from experiencing both sides personally that I know that it's far more user-friendly to use the side lane. And even more important than that, I feel very strongly that safety-wise, so I believe the efficiency, and this project is definitely about getting people places efficiently. But safety should be most important. And so 1 minute difference for having a more safer option, to me, is far more important. And when you look at how you would have to get on the center lane versus a side lane, it's almost like walking a Frogger. Remember the game Frogger? That's what center lane feels like, because people don't always stop for you because they think it's just this narrow little area. Then they just think, oh, I can zoom through real quick. And we all know the Green Line has been where it's been for a few years now, and they're just now starting to be better at stopping when pedestrians are there in those stops where it's a center lane. And consistency is important. I think it's important that we create a transit system that is consistent from one end of the cities to the other. I would love more than that to be true. But each community has its own uniqueness. And we have more width space, as the presenter said, than St. Paul does. And so I think that makes a huge difference. And, you know, I have 15 years of experience being the transit user. And so I still would like to say I have big, strong feelings about option one of the thing we talked about before. And, you know, I think that I also know what it's like to come from not being somewhere in public transit to be coming to a community where it has public transit. So I know what that also feels like and having to learn what that's like. And I feel that the side lane is just the best option for us. And as far as the option one, on the other thing, you know, I've also worked in hospitals, and so I know how people use transit and how people get home when you have a doctor's appointment and things like that. And public transit is used for healthcare places, but having a 223 be able to have the ability to go right in front and then take you is a really great option too. Sorry, I know I took a lot of time.
No, that's quite all right. You know, at this point, we do have a council meeting and a full agenda that starts at 7. So I am going to suggest to my fellow council members, you know, we had the discussion about option 1 and option 2. And I think at least what I'm hearing is that 4 of us prefer option 2, 1 of us prefers option 1. In looking at, I know that you've got a next step slide coming up, and you're going to be coming back to the city council following an evaluation of the center running on St. Paul.
Correct.
On their section of it. Can we maybe delay more discussion? I want to encourage more discussion on center and side running. You know, I know Craig said that you'd be done in 45 minutes, but we have a lot of questions. And this is a good discussion. This is what we're up here for. We're elected to do this for our residents and for our businesses. So, council members, does that sound like a good plan? I mean, we do have at least some direction on option 2 being our preference. And then coming back and looking further, you'll have more information about St. Paul. The good part is just because St. Paul does it doesn't mean that we have to do it. I feel very comfortable about that this can be something that is for our community. So, council members, what do you think? Just because we're running out of time. Is that all right with you, Stephen?
Certainly, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
And it gives us a chance to get the city manager that, you know, the business and residential comments.
Yep.
We would
No,
like to see that, too. We want to see what our local businesses think.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is there anything else that you would like to add just before we close out your section? And, well, I'll ask, when do you think that you will be coming back to us?
I think it's going to take a little bit of time to evaluate the center running in St. Paul, so probably sometime in the summer.
This summer?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. You know, we've got something nice to look forward to, and we'll be seeing you in the summertime.
No, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the staff. Thank you, Commissioner Reinhardt. We really appreciate it. So I am going to adjourn our workshop. Why don't we take,
10 seconds.
Yeah.